here we have a wonderful, wonderful experience. We have Beverly Ott, who is the co-founder and director of the Association Échoppe, which has been working in West Africa for 30 years, primarily Togo and Benin. Beginning with small loans for women in urban areas, Échoppe works today with small farmers, stimulating projects in agroecology, beekeeping, forestry, soil conservation, and organic farming. She and her husband, Olivier, also began a farm in Montpellier 20 years ago, raising primarily sheep and renting bed and breakfast rooms. And I'd like to introduce you to Stéphane, who's here on the screen as well. Bev and Olivier's son. He grew up with all of these projects, his parents talking about these different interesting projects. And he then graduated from the Centrale Marseille in engineering. He spent a year volunteering in Togo on the farm program Planète Paysan. And today he works remotely with the Urban Institute in Washington, D.C. He actually works from France, but works for the Urban Institute. He decided to turn the family farm into a sustainable farm project to explore local solutions to the climate crisis and share ideas with its many visitors. And here we are, and it's really great to have both of you join us for this talk this morning. I will pass it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Phoebe. And it's always nice to be able to come and speak to the library. Under these conditions, I'm sorry, it makes us work differently and use new resources to learn how to use these resources. So I hope today I'll be up to it. I've got my co-pilot here to be able to put some things on screen too, so that's helpful. I'll start because to talk about Échoppe. Some of you may have heard it. It's been around for over 30 years now. Échoppe means exchange for the organization and the promotion of petite or small entrepreneurs. And as you may well know, in French, échoppe is an old French word meaning lean-to or shack along a little shop along the streets. And that's essentially the kind of people we've been aiming at in the last 30 years to work with in Africa, is the small entrepreneurs. It's helping to create entrepreneurship and helping people to get out of poverty through entrepreneurship. And so in these last years, we developed a very large program for women, providing small loans to women, and that in 2009 or 10, it became an independent project, an independent association. And so since then, we have been working with that independent association, Échoppe Togo, to start working then also to go further, because we realized that the women, it was working very fine. The women were repaying their loans, and we also had an action to respond to why the poverty existed. When women could not repay their loans, we looked at, well, what's going on? What's happening in their lives? And so we created social activities, social services to respond to that. Social services like family planning, or fight against malaria, fight against AIDS, a number of social services, and even savings as a service too. And so that went well, but we started realizing that the women would borrow the money, and then they would go and buy chickens from the port in Lomé to resell, and cut up and resell with their machetes, cut up and resell along the streets and street food. And it was like, these chickens are coming from France, from Brazil today, and it was like, wait a minute, there's something missing. We're here to try to encourage economic the services and economic promotion in the local community. And here the women are then going out and using the money that they're making locally and putting it into the international community. So we said, let's try, like we've done here locally in the Maine-et-Loire, to try to create something similar, short circuit economies. Like we worked with the AMAP system here in the community supported agriculture system here in the Maine-et-Loire, and also in the founding of the store, which some of you may have known was Terre et Terroir, trying to bring local farmers in and connecting them to sell locally directly to the community. Okay, but as we started that, then we went to the farmers and we started working. We said, well, we've got to start working with the farmers and to see what are the farmers' needs. And there, as we went into the farm communities, we started seeing something that really shook us up, and that has made us think and made us react even more to what was going on. We didn't realize what was happening as much as it is. We saw something along the streets. If we could show the first picture, these lovely bottles, we'd find them in the along the roads, and they'd be along the roads, they'd be in the fields, and we found one like as gutters, downspouts to catch rain and everything. These are lovely little bottles. They're handy because they close up very well. They're made out of plastic and everything, but what they contain are herbicides. And, you know, the latest development that we hadn't realized over the years, because we've been working in urban areas, the latest developments in the farm community was had been the introduction of herbicides. And this was because there are less and less, there's better education. The students go out, the kids leave the farm community, and so they need workers. And so the best way to get, you know, to avoid workers, let's put the herbicides on the ground. And you know, there's very little machinery to work the fields. And so putting herbicides is a very logical thing. But what was even more shocking to us with these herbicides, we can move to the second picture. What was happening is that these herbicides then also were, here's a store, herbicide store, which is actually banned in Togo. Togo last year, they banned all use of glyphosate and everything like that, but it's not real. And so here you can buy your herbicide as well as your machetes. And what's been interesting is that now that the herbicides are there and they're being used everywhere, but what we saw was these bottles. What shook us up was with these bottles, and because the bottles, in good African terms, you're going to reuse something, you know, and we are in a time of recycling, and so and when you don't have a lot of services, you will recycle. And so what we found is these bottles were recycled. These herbicide bottles were at first, as you know, as a downspout. You can put it so big. As a downspout, and then the people in the community then said, well, yes, we store salt in them because it's good, you know, it keeps it dry, oil, flour, sugar. That the kids will take them to school or use them for water. I was like, we couldn't believe this. This, you know, it's one thing to put herbicides on the ground, and of course they don't use masks and this is, you know, just all by the pump system. And the more you use, the better it works. But we saw this as a public health problem coming up, an upcoming public health problem, and children have died because of this. One person who used to sell the herbicides would keep them in his home in a little mud hut, and he'd keep them in the home, but he had a child, and the child slept there, and the child kept getting sick, and every time they'd take him to the hospital, the child would get better, and they couldn't figure out what was really happening to the child. And suddenly then they realized, then took him home, kept getting sick, And one day the child just died. And one of our workers went to grieve with the father, and he asked, well, where did the child sleep? And he went in there, and you could just smell the fumes that were coming out of this stock area, the storage area. And it's like, wait a minute, we have to do something. And so at first we kind of thought, well, we're just going to work with the farmers to make the link with the women. But we saw that there's much, much more to be done in creating a new farming, a new means of farming, and helping them resolve their problems. And this has been one of the ways that ESHOP has often worked, is to help people look at why. Why is the poverty there? Why didn't this program work? Why can't the people repay? There are always there's something behind it. And so we have to look at what's going on. And so we have had to change our project approach. At first, it was more to just help farmers raise corn and then bring the corn to the women in the city, which we would love to help to make that happen. But we saw that there's so much more because of the use of the herbicides and the lack of help, and so well, how can we respond to this? And so one of the things we have ended up doing, the program ESHOP has bought a farm, has bought 13 hectares of farmland in middle of Togo, to try to do some experimental work in organic farming, and to try to show that we don't need to use the herbicides. But if we don't use the herbicides, then we do need some mechanical help. And one of the things is to look further on, because we also need, the project needs to be able to become self-sufficient one day. We've helped the program become an enterprise. It's called Planet Paysan. And through this enterprise, then we will be we're trying to get a tractor right now, the first machinery that we've had, we're trying to get that tractor right now out of customs and to start working the grounds and to be able to rent the tractor and some of the machinery to other farms to help them so that they don't have to return to use the glyphosate. And we are also trying to help them introduce products like soybeans, that there's a big market for soybeans if they are organic, with less and less fish in the rivers, fewer and fewer fish in the rivers. In Togo, they need other alternatives to proteins. And so years ago, when I started working in Africa with an organization called World Neighbors, we were working at that time just on the introduction of soybeans in Togo. And today, soybeans are becoming really interesting to the people because they make tofu, they make soybean cheese, and then they cook it, they fry it up, and that is the alternative to proteins, to the fish that are missing in the rivers. And so today we are trying to work with farmers locally to provide alternatives for them to find easy forms to keep them on the farm, to keep farmers, and to make farming a viable alternative, to provide them with alternative crops that might work, to help them work on soil conservation, and also to provide them with means that they can work their lands.
Beverly, can I suggest that we open up to questions maybe? Because I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. What is the reaction there in Africa? How are people reacting to the project?
It's in its startup. It's still in its startup, and we're learning. We are still learning a lot. But we've gotten, in this past year, we've gotten a lot of feedback from local farmers that are interested in becoming part of the project. There are some small farmers that have started soybeans, but they don't have the outlets. And so we have two volunteers, very dynamic French volunteers that are down there right now. And they are also helping us connect with some outlets to help the farmers. But the communities are really interested in alternative, in organic foods. Even the women in the markets have shown us that, they would prefer having, they have seen that on the spinach leaves. They've seen spinach leaves that aren't, normal spinach leaves have lots of holes in them because they've been eaten by bugs. But the spinach leaves that have been treated don't have any, they're very nice, clean spinach leaves. But they say, well, if the bugs are going to be killed, then what's that going to be doing to us? And so there's something happening in the psyche of the Togolese people. They're thinking about it. There's a lot more to go. There's a lot more happening because there's so much poverty in the rural areas and the education is missing.
And I think, so I worked on this project for a year back in 2018. And when I was there, I think there was like a dichotomy in the population where people were, first of all, starting to see some of the impacts of climate change with change to the rain schedules and rain seasons. And as Bev was saying about the food quality and the impact of herbicides on their health as well. But at the same time, there's that economic reality where they're saying, well, I can't just do everything without herbicides because it's either more costly and they don't have that much leeway as far as financials, or they just don't have enough workers. And so they're really looking for alternatives. That's, I think, the main thing that I take out from there is that they recognize something is happening and there's better ways, but they just don't necessarily have the opportunities to explore them. And that's where the tractor could come in and things like that. So trying to bring in a new form of agriculture is really something they're looking for.
Right, but not to be, because there is a plan by the government to bring in huge agriculture, that you start with farms that are like 400 hectares, which is taking a lot of land from the small farmer. And our aim is to help the small farmer to survive and make farming survive, make it a viable vocation.
Stéphane, for some reason, we're picking up Bev's voice very well, but not yours. So it might just be a little closer to the microphone, whatever.
Yeah, maybe I just need to speak more into the microphone. Yeah.
Perfect. Fascinating.
Are there any other questions about this, what I've said thus far?
Can you talk a little bit more about what you did locally to support the local farmers here in Maine-et-Loire?
Well, locally here in the Maine-et-Loire, ESHOP was at the beginning of the, and that's a lot of Olivier, my husband, who is an economist, and gave speeches, spoke about what's happening in the economy, the local economy, and what's happening with the grand distribution coming in, big and super discount stores. What does a super discount store do to local farmers? And with that, there was the birth of a whole group of people that came that started one of the first maps in the Maine-et-Loire. But then after that, we kind of said, that's great, but I'm not always available every Thursday evening to go to pick up my vegetables at this place and everything. Some people have another lifestyle. And so we said, we've got to try to find another way to serve farmers and consumers, to make that link in locally. And we worked with some farmers and started the Terre et Terroir movement and this is also after having started stores like Artisans du Soleil in fair trade, which started in 1992, was the beginning of the first store in 1992 in Angers. And later there was a store of Artisans du Soleil with fair trade work in Paris and one in Bordeaux. And those have been taken over since then by Artisans du Monde, the Artisans du Monde movement. So we've been active in trying to look for alternatives, economic alternatives, to respond to social problems so that things can change, and but also look at, you know, what's really happening socially, and that means the climate as well. So bees, everything is part of that.
I have a question for Stéphane. What does think big, think green? What is that? What is that to you? Help us, because we're trying to think about this and talk about this.
Yeah, so for me, think big, think green is sort of has been a constant in the sense in that the climate change issue has sort of been the issue throughout my life. I mean, when I was a kid, that's always the topic we say, oh, that will be yours to solve. And so I sort of became an engineer to address that and started looking into renewable energies and went actually with a shop in Togo working on energy as a means of development as well in those rural communities where you wouldn't have lights. So at 6 p.m. you don't have much you can do because it's dark or something. So it is hard to do both a work and typically working in the fields and then studying or going beyond in the evening or earlier in the morning. But some of the challenges there, so personally, I mean, it was as a student, I had to continue my studies. And so it is hard to create a long-lasting project. And then there's also the economic reality that kind of struck us on those technologies, where people there needed energy, but they also needed better outcomes for their production and such. And that fits back into the farm project that I was talking about. So being an engineer, my next step was to start working in web development in Washington for the Urban Institute, which sounds a little off for Think Big, Think Green. But that was really more of a means to an end. And I think that's a reality there because we hear a lot about those ideas, and I love learning more about regenerative agriculture or smart grids and new technologies that can get us to a carbon-free world and all. But how do we actually make them happen is probably the hardest part there, and getting into that action. And so being a software engineer enables me to then bounce back and to put more time into action. And there's really like a balance to be found between resources, opportunities, and those ideas. To put something into motion, you do need to have some people you can work with, or some finances, or any kind of a resource that you can build upon. So from Washington, I was able to join the project in Togo on sustainable agriculture, trying to get that farm going as that Bev was talking about, working with farmers and getting a team going there, which was really interesting and rewarding. But again, there was a bit of an imbalance in that I could only do it for as long as my savings would allow. So that got me also thinking about the impact I was having there, which is the project is great. It is really like, it is the solution in to many problems, in that if we change how we do agriculture, that will change issues around deforestation. So that will reduce the impact of climate change and make agriculture easier in the future in Togo. It will have economic impact and so on. But if I cannot sustain that, we're not actually going to make much of a change. And there's also the impact that I'm having, where going back and forth to Togo, I am still using the plane. I am still having a pretty negative impact on the climate, which had me thinking, okay, how could we actually reconcile both of those and find the right balance between opportunities to make a difference, great ideas that need to be promoted, and which resources do I have that are available to me to make that change. And that's when I was brought back to this farm we're in, where I grew up, where we have 10 hectares and about 50 sheep, which is an absolutely magical place. I mean, I'm probably a little biased, but I would say come and visit if you want to relax or just enjoy nature. But whenever I come back from being abroad, that's really when I see this is a very nice place. And we hear it from every person who comes in the guest house and such. So how can we keep that, but also make it something further? Make it more of a sustainable farm so that we can have a positive impact on the environment, not just maintain biodiversity, but promote it. So Beverly started talking about bees, for example, so promoting the insect life so that we do not lose our pollinators, which are key to our food system. But also, how can we, with 10 hectares, we should be able to provide enough food to sustain ourselves. How come we have to, and when I say we, it's anyone living on the farm, but also our visitors. Why do we have to go buy crops that could be grown here? How could we make a model that is both self-sustaining and that can also provide as an inspiration or as a demonstration for people who come and see? So come and view the farm. You can like first use the consume the produce here, reduce the impact that you have basically on society around and on the environment, but also act as a place to exchange ideas, as I think that's probably one of the biggest things that can be done. And that's actually great that you're having this series on Think Big, Think Green, Phoebe and the American Library, because change is difficult. And those ideas are amazing, but they can also be daunting. And bringing people together to work together and share those ideas, I think is a very powerful way of doing things. So in a way, that's what led me to this farm, even though I was initially thinking, I'm an engineer, I want to do big projects on renewable energies. The reality is that we all need to eat, and agriculture has a huge impact on our lives. And if we can build a way to combine our modern lifestyle, where we work in cities, we like all of the things we do, but combine that with a more sustainable, even if it's localized way of living, then that could be a real change maker for and a springboard for many other projects, I believe. So that's sort of where we're going with this farm project. We're still at the very inception of it. Feel free to ask more if you want to know a bit more about what we're doing. I don't know which part of it people here are looking to hear more about. But
I think
I feel like opening it to questions if there's any.
The words that you're speaking are inspiring us, just those words. And that's really the opening of a discussion, and seeing that somebody of your generation is really talking about this and addressing it. And it's heartwarming for us.
Yeah,
we're open, we can open up to questions while people are thinking if they have a question. So what is in 5 years, what is the farm going to be like? What is it going to do?
Oof, that's a tough one.
Sorry about that.
Well, if everything goes as planned, so to speak, which it probably won't, that's kind of the reality of things as well. But the idea is really to have a place where people can meet, where we could have conferences or cultural events, and people can come and discover something on their own, with others, or around the area, visiting what's happening in the fields. So for now, for example, we are starting with vegetable gardening, and we want to do it in a way that we can also use that as a demonstration, showing, okay, if you have a 10 square meter plot at your house or something, what can you grow? Or when we talk about regenerative agriculture and carbon sequestration, as you may know, there's like big projects that try to suck the carbon out of the air and store it back. Typically right now, they're storing it back into old oil fields, so deep underground, which has many issues in my opinion. One of them being that it enables you to extract more oil out of those fields. But it's sort of a point where we're at with climate change, where we do need to remove carbon from the atmosphere. And another way of doing that is to put it on our soils. So I'm going to get a little technical into agriculture here, but basically you need to have carbon in the soil for it to be healthy. And many of our modern agricultural techniques kind of bypass that by putting a lot of chemical fertilizers and such. So you still have good yields, but you're reducing the carbon content in the soil. And bringing that back by letting straw or wood chips that are going to slowly break down into the ground is a huge means of increasing the carbon you're keeping on the soil rather than having it go into the air.
There's a wonderful documentary film called Kiss the Ground, which is an hour all about this. And it really shows, it illustrates it. They're actually filming what the difference between a field that has been treated with pesticides and then a field that has not been treated. And it's very clear what it's doing to the soil. And it's all about the soil.
Yeah, yeah. And so we're hoping to have a little patch where we can show that difference and see how, for someone who comes around, see how that could look and potentially how you could replicate it, or give a chance for anyone who wants to do such an experiment to have a little place there too. So hopefully in 5 years, that's what it looks like. And we'd have solar panels and we're producing more energy than we're using and so on. So that's where we're going, or hoping to go anyway.
How do you educate the younger generation to bring these questions into their minds, their daily lives?
We're waiting for the Lycée Pouillet to come as part of the bibliothèques, the library's action with this project. And so we're very happy that they're going to be coming and that we can share with the younger generation what's going on. Even though we are in a tiny, we're just in the beginning.
I can explain what that project is. We're working with agriculture high school in Angers called the Lycée Pouillet. And we're bringing students from the lycée out to the farm to visit and talk to Stéphane and Bev, so they actually see what you're doing, what this encompasses.
Just a little anecdote is that years ago, I had a nephew that he was 17 years old and all excited about life and everything. And I just asked him, well, what are you going to do? What do you want to do when you grow up? Well, he didn't like the question because it was kind of like, grow up, I'm already grown. And then he responded, and then he asked me, well, what do you, I was 40 years old at the time, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, well, I'd like to either be president or a farmer. And neither one was appropriate for him, because a president, you're getting into politics and everything else. And being a farmer, that was no question about that. That's just not appropriate either. But I said, what I want to be is, being a farmer, I want to be able to plant love, cultivate revolt, because so many people are not revolted, or they're revolted in all sorts of directions that they grow like weeds. So I want to plant love, cultivate revolt, and raise consciousness. And I think this series on Think Big, Think Green is part of that consciousness raising. And I say bravo to the library and all its actions in trying to bring, and well, the whole activity of the library is to bring an opening to people and to cultivate people into thinking differently and in consciousness. And this is what the farm here is about, what Africa is about, and what we're doing together.
There's a president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, who actually was president and farmer at the same time, and set up a large farm, which I don't know if you visited, but
yes, I love it.
It's quite astounding. Questions, anybody? Feel free to open up your microphones and share. Liz, yes.
Yeah, no, it just strikes me that it's great what you're saying. You brought tears to my eyes, Beverly, with what you just said about the plant. Oh my God, it's really amazing. But it strikes me
Liz, come up closer to your microphone.
You can't hear. Okay, maybe it's because I have my Wonder Boom on. Can you hear me like that?
Yes, it's okay.
can see me closer then, it's scary. It strikes me we have a garden club, we have a walk and talk club, we have all sorts of clubs. I think we ought to have a think big, think green club, and actually start with a visit to, when we can, with a visit to your farm, and then really try and open up visiting all sorts of different projects, ecological projects, environmental projects. You were talking about the documentary, Phoebe, Kiss the Ground. If you come to my house, we try to, we mulch, we use permaculture, doing all sorts of things. And then our neighbor, who's a lovely guy, he's a fanatic with mowing the grass and constantly churning over one plot of soil, which he doesn't actually grow anything in. So the whole year, he has a huge square of soil. So it's a bit like that. If you have a satellite picture, our garden a mess, and his is really neat and tidy. So you can start like that. But I'm trying to just talk to him a bit, and gradually things, I think, will creep through his fence if he then doesn't come and burn it, because he comes along with his burner and burns everything. But I'm just trying to do it that way. But it's true that just getting the man in the street, that's a bit sexist, the person in the street, to understand these really basic issues is a big problem. And these are perfectly decent, intelligent human beings. How do we get through to them? So that's my question. We can start with a club at the library.
It is the biggest challenge, though, the human element in development, in farming. It's the human element that's finding the right personnel, the staff, the people that can make these projects happen. It's not easy.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely the hardest part, but I think the best way to get to that is to sort of go at it by different angles. I think many of those sustainable projects are really interesting because they are powerful because they have so many dimensions to them. And I think the one in Togo that Beverly was talking about is really interesting in that aspect, in that it's all about the environment. Sure, we're trying to reduce the use of herbicides because it's bad for the environment, but it's actually also bad for your health. So if you don't care about the environment, you probably do care about your health. And if you don't care about neither, well, there's still better ways of producing. If you refertilize the soil with organic matter and such, you're going to have better yields. And so typically, if finding the right dimension, I believe a good project should always be able to bring in someone, unless they're really trying not to, they're having a very negative attitude. And at that point, that's okay. There's always skeptics that will need to see the results before they're like, oh, that's actually really good. So it's hard for me to say let's give up on someone, but it sometimes can be very challenging to just debate with someone who is so skeptical that they won't listen. So I don't think there's a good solution, but going by different angles, I think, is our best way forward.
Little by little.
Mm-hmm. One of the angles that the library is trying to take, and I love your thought, Liz, let's talk more about that, and with Bev and Stéphane as well, is opening up this discussion or continuing the discussion, is that we have, we've put together a seed library. So we're no longer just the library. You don't only borrow books, but you can also you don't borrow them. Well, you can borrow them actually, because you can take them home, plant them, bring the seeds back. And so it's sharing these seeds. This is a free, something we've just set up with the garden club. And so this box is here at the library. Whoops, boom. And the great thing is that, I don't know if you remember the old card catalogs in libraries where you would look at the different records from the library. We're going to turn that into a larger seed library.
Oh, great.
So
that's awesome.
I think you're saying just start small, do what you can, and share it.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're having another event coming up. I'm just announcing. Our next speaker is going to be a young woman whose name is Eliza Fertig, and she works for the American government. Of course, there's a lot of controversy about what the American government is doing or not doing, but the Biden administration is doing some things, obviously. We're focusing on April 22nd is Earth Day. And Bev, you, I'm sure, remember Earth Day from years and years and years. This is a celebration or preserving for the planet Earth. It's an organization that is now 51 years old, so it's been around for a long time thinking about these questions. And so on Earth Day, which is April 22nd each year, we're going to have a talk by Eliza Fertig, who is part of the, she's an agriculture attaché at the US mission for the European Union in Brussels. So basically this is policy from the American government talking to Europe about agriculture. And she's going to talk about America's family farms. And I know, Bev, you grew up in a very rural area in the United States. Can you talk to us about that?
The America's Family Farm is that, yes, when I was growing up, my father worked at a factory at International Harvester, 40 hours a week. And he farmed because it was his vocation. And farming, he farmed 75 hectares. That's 225 acres. But yeah, yes. So, but he did that because he didn't make enough money farming. So, but farming was his life. And so that's why he worked at the factory. But what was interesting was that my mother, because, okay, we were a family of 5 kids and everything, but my mother, because my father couldn't do everything, I grew up with a mother on the tractor. And she was out there plowing or disking or whatever. And so I didn't know that it was prohibited or that it was interdit or whatever you want to say. And so I have always been that kind of person to go out too. And I think, thankfully, thanks to my mother, I've gotten that kind of go out and do it kind of feeling, even though sometimes she said, like, could you just stay home? But the family farm was something that, yes, it was very important. But it was also, it was something that wasn't, there were no aids. And this is one thing that Europe has always been very helpful for. And family farming, all kinds of farming, rarely can a farm survive without the supports of governments. That's been the reality over the years. I wish it could be different. And what we try to preach sometimes in Africa, I've always heard, it's got to, the farming has to be, rentable, it has to be profitable and everything. But in reality, European and American farming depends a lot on government subsidies. But my growing up in a farm, I saw the changes from small farming to the introduction of the herbicides, which again was a big revolution. And, it seemed so good, but it wasn't. It wasn't the best alternative, and we didn't have enough means to look back.
Well, tune in on the 22nd of April at 10 o'clock because some of those governmental policies in the United States might be changing, and she's going to be talking about the family farms. She says 98% of farms in the United States are family farms. That's pretty interesting. I would think it would be much lower. But anyways, there'll be lots more information. So that's the next step in understanding sort of overseas and what different countries are doing. Any other questions? We have a couple more minutes.
If anybody wants to know a little bit more about ESHOP or the La Gaucherie aux Dames, you can look on, we do have sites. They're not necessarily kept up to date, but you can look up eshop.org, ECHOPPE.org. consulate.org if you want to learn more about what we do in Africa. Or you can also look at lagaucheriodam.com. Lagaucheriodam is where we live here in Montillier.
We can put those links up on our website. I thought I did, but I see I did not. So we'll make sure those links are up on the website so that you have them available.
And I just posted them in the chat for anyone who needs.
Oh, great. Perfect. Thank you, Stéphane. Tell us where the farm is. What does your farm look like? What it tell you have 10 acres, right? Hectares, sorry. 13 hectares.
We actually have 13, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Where is it?
So it's on the side of the Lys River in southern Maine-et-Loire, so close to Villers or Montillier for those who are familiar. And it's mostly along the river with pasture fields, so which are used for hay and sheep farming. And we are trying to add more trees, more hedgerows, as those are really good for biodiversity. And we are the project for this year, on top of all of the sheep farming, is to add raspberries, strawberries, and about 1,000 square meters of vegetable gardening.
And flowers.
And flowers.
We're going to be doing flowers for seed. That's my little manique.
But that fit very well with the beekeeping, obviously. So it's building those synergies basically, and that's also the benefit of having the sheep, because you get a bunch of manure that you can then use on the crops to get better vegetables, and so on. So right now we started just last fall, so it's our first season that's coming up. It's quite exciting right now actually to see all of the plants starting to sprout and seeing, oh, raspberries are growing,
and oh no, it's freezing out there.
Yes, this season has not been the easiest between lack of rain and cold, but that's also reality. Agriculture is climate dependent, so.
Right. What about climate change? How do you take that into consideration in the future of what you're doing here locally?
So that's the first thing I would say is that we're already seeing some of those effects by more extremes, so to speak, or less predictable weather. It would be quite untypical, and I mean, I've only been around 20 years. Probably some of you are more from the area, have been here longer, but winters are warmer, that's for sure. We have less snow days or less freezing days, which means more rodents, for example. So we know we need to deal with those more. Or the rains are less predictable, which leads to some watering needing to happen at this season in April, which normally you have plenty of just the weather coming from the rains. So I guess that's one first observation. And then the way we are growing the crops is that we're trying to apply, it's very close to what permaculture does basically, which is as much as possible building up the soil and the plants so that they can be as resilient as possible and reducing the strain we put on resources. We are lucky to have a lot of water sources here, but we're not quite sure how far they go actually. So using mulching and paillage in French, I'm not sure how you say that, but like soil covering to prevent evaporation of the water so that we don't have to water as much. Building on the soils also synergies, trying to till as little as possible, building the microorganisms, cross-planting so that the plants can get stronger on their own, and we build that biome that will, in agriculture, diversity is resilience to some extent. So we are both testing it out and using that to our advantage. And hopefully that will help go through some of the harsh climate that we will have with more droughts and such.
It's fascinating. I think what Liz was saying is that we really have to come and see the farm because you understand so much more than having you
Right.
speak. It's wonderful having you
Yes.
speak on the screen, but we'd love to organize that. And so we'll work on that. I think that's the next step to
Yeah,
Yeah.
an image says so much more, and a visit even more. So anytime.
I have a question for Bev. This is a really important question. When is strawberry season? We'll come for the strawberries.
We hope it's going to be around in June, coming in June. I don't know.
Right. We're
This
there
year
in
might
June.
come later.
Yeah, we'll keep you informed. You can put it on the site. Yes, and they will be you pick. So.
Yes, wonderful. Did you have strawberries growing up as a child, Bev?
Yes, we had a garden, but what I'm missing and what I'm hoping to get planted this year is corn on the cob. And so then, you know, if anybody wants to sign up for how many ears you want, no problem. I really want to do good corn on the cob and not the kind that's harvested too late.
My mouth is watering.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I just a little comment on that. When I first arrived in France in '95, into the countryside, we were walking through these fields of corn on the cob, and I said to our French friend, "Oh, that's fantastic! I can't wait for them all to be ready for us to eat." You know, memories of buttery corn on the cob. And he just looked at me. He said, "You eat that? This is for the cows."
Yes.
And to get corn on the cob, I had to go to the supermarket and get a plastic wrapped, you know, mini corns like that. So yeah, bring it on, bring it on.
Yes. And it's always too ripe. It's really what we would feed the pigs. And so
we tried growing some, and then the cows in the field next door actually broke through the fence and they ate all our corn.
Oh,
They ate everything in the garden.
I'm so sorry, Liz. That's a terrible
Years ago.
story.
Oh,
That's our biggest fear here. The sheep aren't far away.
Well, thank you, Bev and Stéphane. It was really, really great.
thank you for organizing all of
Yes,
this.
yes.
What the wonderful thing is that we have recorded it, so people can come back to it and go and listen to it carefully. And we'll be posting it up on our YouTube channel. Our librarianship has changed greatly. We're now, you know, do videos and all sorts of things, as Mandy knows, and Liz and everybody, the staff here, and so, yeah, write down that date of the 22nd of April for the next talk that we're going to be having. And thank you. Have a great day, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you, everyone.